Transplant. Karen rolled her wheelchair off the elevator on the basement level, her laundry basket in her lap. Charlie, the cute guy from across the hall, was coming out of the laundry room. He was so beautiful that her heart skipped a beat as he held the door for her. He was on the skinny side, but his hair was a luminous chestnut brown. His eyes were startling robin egg blue, and his skin was so perfect that it almost glowed. "Thank you," she said. "No problem," he said. She wondered if he could see her blush, and kept going. If so, he gave no sign. He just left. She rolled over to the washer and put the detergent on one machine, then flipped the lid open on a second and upended the laundry basket into it. She then measured out detergent into the measuring cup and tossed it in. She shut the lid, put coins into the machine, and started it. She left the basket and the detergent and rolled herself out. She hoped someone would be there when the laundry was done. If not, she'd have to stand, and that could get awkward. She could only stand for short periods of time because of the multiple sclerosis, and those time periods were getting shorter and shorter. If she had been more disabled, she would have qualified for a whole-body transplant, but she was just barely disabled enough for the chair. On the other hand, falling on the plain cement floor would be much worse than falling on carpet. She rolled herself out of the laundry room and back to the elevator. She wondered if a boy like Charlie would ever notice her. Well, she supposed people noticed her as an object of pity, but she wanted them to notice her as a woman. She might not be able to stand without support for more than a few moments, but there were things she thought she'd be able to manage if given a chance. She was sure people didn't even want to think of her that way. The elevator door opened, and she pressed the button to go up to street level. There was a coffee shop across the street, and she enjoyed sitting over there among people and drinking coffee, even if they didn't really talk to her much. There was one barista, Nancy, who trained seeing eye dogs and had a blind sister, but the rest of the staff wasn't as friendly as she was. Up on the street level, she rolled out the front door. Charlie was across the 4 lanes of fast traffic, outside the coffee shop, chatting up a blonde girl in a skimpy dress. Karen felt a hot, sick sensation in the pit of her stomach. Of course, he wouldn't notice her. She rolled over to the corner and pressed the button for the crosswalk. She would have given 10 years of her life right then to be beautiful, to be the girl boys noticed. The crosswalk light said walk. Ha. She would if she could. So she rolled into the intersection, wheels bumping and clattering as she slightly missed the ramp. Charlie glanced over at her, eyes wide, and there was something in his expression that made her look to her left just in time to see the car barreling down on her at high speed. Karen could hear the doctor talking, but she couldn't open her eyes or move. Everything hurt. It took all the concentration she had to understand what the doctor was saying. Parts of the wheelchair broke loose and speared through her body. One handrail speared through one of her lungs and exited just under her ribcage. The other had to be removed from her vagina. Her spine broke in 3 places, and the accident crushed one of her kidneys. She's suffering massive head trauma. "Will she live?" It was her mother's voice. Karen could smell her mother's favorite knockoff perfume. "We don't know that yet," the doctor said. "If she regains consciousness, we'll be able to determine the extent of the head trauma." There was a pause. "As for her physical injuries, it's possible she'll need dialysis. It depends on how the other kidney adapts." "Will she still be able to wheel herself around?" "When her arm heals," the nurse answered. There was silence, except for footsteps, and then her mother read. "It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man, in possession of a good fortune, must be in want of a wife." Karen dozed off. When she woke up, she could hear snoring in the chair next to her. Most people couldn't sleep in hospital chairs, but her mother had practice. She tried to open her eyes. She cracked one eye open and saw her mother silhouetted against a window with a streetlight and blinds, head lolled back against the wall. The streetlight looked almost painfully bright, even though she knew it wasn't. The next thing she knew, the nurse was greeting her, "Good morning," and scratching something on a piece of paper from the sound of it. She cracked an eyelid again. The nurse was an older woman with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes, who didn't seem to notice Karen was awake. She didn't have the strength to say anything, and the nurse went away. A doctor came in, opened an eyelid, and shined a penlight in her eyes. She followed them with her eyes. "I think she's conscious," he said. Her mother leaned over and looked into her face. "Karen?" Karen tried to answer, but it was too hard. "It's all right," her mother said. "You don't have to answer. I know you can hear me, sweetie." Karen was so relieved that she could almost cry. The doctor had her follow his pen with her eyes some more, and then wrote on a piece of paper. "She can make facial expressions, too. I think she's just weak." "Should I read to her more?" Karen hoped that her mother hadn't brought one of her Harlequin romance novels. The last thing she needed was to read about something she was afraid she was even less likely to have now than before. "Sure," the doctor said. Karen's mother whipped out a book. "I might have to skip the spicy bits." Jane Austen had spicy bits? Her mother must have finished Pride and Prejudice. Karen managed a groan. Then she fell asleep again. When Karen woke up, nothing hurt. And it wasn't painkillers, because she could feel the sheet and the hospital gown. No, the absence of pain was almost a sensation in itself. She kicked off the sheet and then realized that she could kick off the sheet. She opened her eyes and looked around. She looked down at her body, and instead of a bony torso, there was an attractive figure, with full breasts and a well-proportioned breastbone and slender waist. She wiggled her toes. Her hands were slender and beautiful. She reached up and touched her face. It didn't feel like hers. And her hair. Instead of a limp, dull-colored mess, it was long and golden blonde with wave to it. She wondered if she was dreaming. She considered pinching herself, but she'd never believed that worked anyway. She must have qualified for transplant. She sat up and swung her legs over the side of the bed. She felt a breeze on her butt as the rough cloth of her hospital gown gaped a little in the back. People rarely liked seeing her bony backside anyway, but she was alone. She pulled the gown together anyway and stood. There was no awkwardness, no lack of balance. She stood straight and walked easily to the window. Several floors below, she could see people walking around on the street, going about their business. Her mother came into the room. "Karen?" She could see how her mother might be confused on that point. "I finally qualified." Her mother nodded. "How do you feel?" Karen walked over to the mirror. She was beautiful. Instead of twitchy brown eyes, she had sparkling blue eyes. Not as pretty as Charlie's, but still very nice. She wondered if she was dreaming again. She couldn't imagine being the girl in the mirror. She wondered what had happened to this pretty girl that her body had become available. Lucky? She wondered if Charlie might notice her now. She was prettier than the girl he was talking to the day of the accident. Or her body was, at any rate. Her mother came over and hugged her. It had been years since she'd been able to stand up straight and hug without leaning on her mother to support her. This was comfortable, so she put her chin on her mother's shoulder, leaned her head against her mother's head, and sighed happily. Her mother was warm, soft. "I agree," her mother said. She was released and wheeled out of the hospital, even though she could walk now. Something about liability. And then her mother drove her home. They went up the elevator, and Karen dug in her purse for her keys. That was the last place she'd seen them, and she assumed, correctly, as it turned out, they were still there. Charlie came out of his apartment, then edged over, cheeks pink, shy. It was the single cutest thing Karen had ever seen. "Hi," Charlie said. "Are you new?" "Yes," Karen said, and she supposed she was. All of her was new from head to toe. She pulled her keys out of her purse. Charlie stuck out his hand. "I'm Charlie." Karen tried to shake hands, but her keys were in the way. she laughed. Karen. Huh, he said. The last girl who lived here was named Karen, too. Karen said, but her heart beat faster. Maybe he'd noticed her after all. So, Charlie said, let me know if you need anything. I have all sorts of random shit in my apartment. I'll lend you anything you like. Karen couldn't help but laugh again. Karen's mother crossed her arms and gave Charlie an unfriendly look. I'll catch you later, Charlie said. I've got to meet my mom for lunch. And then he ambled down the hall in a charmingly awkward kind of constantly looking back over his shoulder way. Karen unlocked her door, and she and her mother went in. Her mother shut the door behind him. The apartment was cleaner than when she left it, vacuumed and dusted, and piles of magazines thrown away. All the things she had trouble doing in her chair. Her mother must have tidied up for her. She turned to her mother, intending to thank her. Trouble, Karen's mom said. What do you mean? Karen asked. I think he's sweet. Sweet. Her mother shook her head and dropped her purse on the table with a resounding thud. He's a user, just like your father. I can spot one a mile away. Karen resisted the urge to roll her eyes. She'd heard enough of her mother's rantings about her father. Her mother flopped down on the sofa with a thud. The sofa wobbled. It wasn't like Karen had used it before. Are you even listening to me? Of course, Karen said. Her mother made a disgusted noise. Time to change the subject. I think I need new clothes, Karen said. That still didn't do it, so she added, I could get a job. As Karen expected, her mother perked up. What will you do? I used to work in a grocery store, she said. I could do that again. Screw that, her mother said. You could model. Karen burst out laughing. Seriously, her mother said. Your new body is pretty enough. Karen walked over to a mirror and looked at herself again. She wondered again what happened to the pretty girl who used to have it. Erica Watson, the hospital had told her. She needed to know because of her fingerprints. Maybe Erica had been in an accident, too, although it didn't seem likely. She didn't see any scars. I guess. Her mother lay down on the sofa. I need sleep. Do you mind? No, Karen said, and went into the bathroom and shut the door. She stripped off her clothes and examined every inch of her new body she could see. Not a single mark. No sign of anything bad happening. Body transplants occurred after the donor died. Karen ran a bath and put her hair up, which was harder than she would have expected. She supposed she'd have to learn how to shave her legs, not that the blonde hair showed much, and all those other things she never did when she was in the chair. Do her hair, wear makeup. Maybe modeling wouldn't be such a bad thing. She could learn about all those things on the job. She didn't even own makeup or a hairdryer. Maybe her mother could help. She dried herself off and pulled on one of her flannel nighties. It was soft and warm, but she might need something nicer to wear to bed. Not that anyone would see her right away, but eventually someone might. She might even get married someday. Karen never would have gone to Ford Modeling Agency if her mother hadn't suggested it. The receptionist looked up from filing her nails and gave Karen an inscrutable look, black page boy swinging slightly from the movement. Karen stopped. She and the receptionist looked at each other for a moment. My mother suggested I model. My name is Karen. I'm a transplant. The receptionist tilted her head at Karen. Then she pressed a button on the phone. Miss Mitchell, I think you'll want to see this potential student. Miss Mitchell was a tall, thin, elegant African-American woman. She gave Karen a long, up-and-down look. She's a transplant, the receptionist said. Karen fidgeted. If you want work, you'll need to take hair care, makeup, and movement classes, Miss Mitchell said. Okay, Karen said. They handed Karen a contract, and Karen handed them her mother's credit card. On the way home, she walked a block out of her way to avoid the intersection where she got hit. She got off the elevator, and Charlie's door opened, like it always did. He grinned and took her shopping bag full of jeans, sneakers, and t-shirts and her groceries. Even though she was able-bodied now, she thought that was cute. It was even cuter when he put her groceries away for her. "Hey," he said, "would you like me to cook you dinner sometime? I'm a good cook, I swear." So was Karen. She used to cook when she was in the chair. She had never been hungry, and she'd have to make something that smelled fantastic to want to eat. She wondered what Charlie liked to eat, and if he'd like to come over and have dinner sometime. She wasn't forward enough to ask, though. What if he said no? Maybe, she said. He had such a dazzling smile. He was so beautiful. His eyes were so blue. She could get lost in them. Charlie asked her to coffee, and that seemed innocuous enough that she said yes. He picked her up at her door and took her hand. They walked towards the coffee shop across the street, to the place where he'd been chatting up the blonde in the skimpy dress. She hadn't crossed the street at that corner since the accident. She considered trying to stop him, to suggest that they go another way, but it seemed too awkward, so she crossed this time, with Charlie holding her hand. She hadn't been to the coffee shop since her accident either. They were hiring, and Karen thought it might be fun to work there part-time, and made a mental note to check it out later. Nancy, the tall, friendly, overweight barista who trained seeing eye dogs, was on duty, but didn't recognize her. That made Karen sad, but it wasn't like they'd been close friends or anything. Besides, why would she recognize her? It wasn't like she looked anything like her old self. And Nancy had changed, too. She'd dyed her hair red. It suited her. Nancy's seeing eye puppy wagged its tail at Karen. "He likes you," she said. "I'm Nancy, by the way." "Karen." She could see a question in Nancy's eyes, but Nancy didn't ask it. Karen was glad. She didn't want Charlie to think of her as her ugly old self. He clearly liked pretty girls. They got their coffee and sat over by the window and talked. About superficial things. What Karen liked to watch on television, whether she liked any sports, how much he loved soccer, dogs. Karen had been on a list for a helper dog, but she didn't tell Charlie that. It rained. People rushed by with newspapers over their heads. They stayed by the window and waited for the rain to stop. After, he walked her back to her apartment and kissed her on the cheek at the door. It was her first kiss. Karen went to lie down. She had thought the weak in the knee stuff was silly hyperbole, but this was Charlie. He was so unbelievably beautiful. She couldn't believe she could be this lucky. Other guys enjoyed talking to her, and it was fun to talk to people, but they weren't Charlie. She would need to read more romance novels so she could figure out what people in love did. She had no idea. Get married, she supposed. Have sex. She suddenly realized that she never had to worry about whether someone being interested in her was a sign of something being wrong with them. She was so relieved that she almost cried. It was a day for firsts. First date, first kiss. Maybe she should cry. The next day, Charlie invited her to dinner at his house. It was Chinese takeout, not anything he'd cooked, but it was good, and his house was clean. Then they sat on his sofa and kissed. He felt her up over her clothes. When he asked her if she wanted to stay, she bolted home. She was glad that Charlie didn't give up easily. He came by the next day to ask her out to dinner. They went to a sushi restaurant, where the two of them turned heads. They stayed for hours, talking and laughing. And then Charlie took her home and kissed her at the door. They ended up going into her apartment. They made out on her couch for a while, and then he lowered himself to the floor and lifted her skirt and pulled her panties off. He pulled her hips to the edge of the couch and put her head between her legs. She'd never imagined anything could feel so good. He undressed her then, and himself. They had sex on the couch. Karen wondered if she should insist on a condom, but she really couldn't refuse. She loved Charlie. She had loved Charlie before they had transplanted her. Her new body was a gift that enabled her to have Charlie, and she was so grateful to Erica Watson for donating her body to her. Afterwards, they lay in a sweaty, tangled heap on the couch, Charlie had scars on his wrists. She wondered what happened to him, whether he was an accident or if he'd tried to kill himself. She'd hoped it was an accident. She was about to ask, but that was nice, Charlie said. We should do that again. Yeah, she said. Are you seeing anyone else? It was an odd question for him to ask, but his eyes were guileless with simple curiosity. You were my first. He seemed a little freaked out by that, but he said nothing. They lay there silent for a while, and then she dozed off. She woke up alone. She supposed that Charlie might have had to go to work. Not that she even knew if he had a job or not. She would probably go to school herself. She showered and dressed and went to class, but she was distracted. All she could think about was Charlie. She couldn't wait to see him again. She probably needed to get birth control. Then she was amazed that she actually needed birth control. She wasn't even sure how she'd go about getting some. Her gynecologist, she supposed. On her way home, she bought condoms. She couldn't stop blushing. When she got home, Charlie was talking to a girl with big red curly hair in skin-tight jeans, a low-cut shirt, and heels outside his apartment. When the girl laughed, she put her hand on his chest. Karen almost dropped her bag of condoms. She let herself into her apartment and closed the door behind her. She then leaned up against the door. She could hear Charlie and the girls' voices, but couldn't make out what they were saying. Then she heard the elevator and Charlie's door close. She went across the hall and knocked on Charlie's door. When he answered, she didn't know what to say. I'm seeing other people, Charlie said. You should too. I don't want to see anyone else, Karen said. Her eyes burned, and she blinked hard to avoid crying. Shit, Charlie said. Look, I'm sorry. I wouldn't have if I knew you were a virgin, but... Tears spilled down Karen's cheeks. She didn't bother to wipe them away. Shit. Charlie looked at the floor and shuffled his feet for a minute. What the hell? Are you, I don't know, religious or something? She considered going back to her apartment and closing the door. Instead, she said, I'm a transplant. I'm the same girl who lived in my apartment before. Shit. There was another silence while he looked at the floor. And then he looked up at her, confrontational. You lied to me. You said you were new. I am new, Karen said. Charlie made a disgusted-sounding noise and rolled his eyes. It's not like you were interested in me before. What the fuck? Charlie said. I knew you were a cripple with a fantasy, which, no offense, but I'm not ready to take on a healthy, able-bodied, steady girlfriend, let alone one in a wheelchair. But now that you're in a new body, you'll get your little crippled girl fantasy come true? Did you get hit by a car on purpose? What? Karen hadn't ever stammered before, and part of her observed it dispassionately. Of course I didn't get hit deliberately. Bullshit, Charlie made a face. People do, you know. Everyone knows it. There was a new emotion taking hold. A cold heat that started in her stomach and sucked all the warmth from her extremities to feed it. Have you ever been hit by a car, Charlie? It fucking hurts. You must think a lot of yourself. Charlie didn't appear to have an answer for that. The handrails of my chair? One went under my rib cage and speared my lung. It broke my spine. I had permanent damage to my kidneys and head trauma. Do you really think I would do all that to myself for you? Assuming you're not lying to me again, Charlie said. Forget it, Karen said. My mother was right about you. I should have known better. She turned to go back to her apartment, but she couldn't let it go. I'll be back tomorrow with my medical records. You can shove them up your ass. Whatever. She shook her head. She didn't even know who he was anymore. She supposed she never did. She stormed back to her apartment and slammed the door. She considered calling her mother, but she didn't want to listen to her saying, I told you so. A cripple with a fantasy? Throwing herself in front of a car on purpose? For a second, it crossed her mind that Charlie would be sorry if she really did throw herself in front of a car. Then she remembered how much it hurt and decided he wasn't worth it. To hell with him. Since she wasn't planning on having a date with anyone anytime soon, she tried to figure out what happened to Erica Watson instead. She went to the public library and searched obituaries. It turned out Erica Watson had killed herself by carbon monoxide poisoning. Over a boy, which made more sense to Karen now than it would have before Charlie. She printed out the obituaries to take home with her. On her way home, she saw Charlie in the hall with an older woman who might be his mother and flipped him the bird. She went into her apartment and put her printouts on the table, then went to the refrigerator to get a cold Diet Coke. There was a knock at the door. It was Charlie. He wriggled past her into her apartment. Is it really necessary to embarrass me in front of my mom? Cripple with a fantasy? Threw myself in front of a car on purpose? Yeah, I think it is. Jesus, Charlie said. I'm sorry I hurt you, okay? Karen said. Are we done? Charlie's eye fell on the printouts on the table. Erica's picture was at the top of the obituary. Why do you want to read this? It's morbid. I just want to know about her, Karen said. There's an empty grave somewhere. I may want to leave flowers. She looked down at Erica's picture, too. Besides, if the body has a predisposition to depression, maybe I should know about it. Charlie shuddered. Do most transplants want to know about their donors? I don't know, Karen said. I do. Wouldn't you? No, Charlie said. I'd think of myself as being a corpse. You've never been disabled, Karen said. I had them burn my Judas of a body. I wish I could have tossed the match myself. Charlie stared at her, and she wondered why she was confiding in him. There was a long, awkward silence, and then Charlie said, I should go. For a moment, she considered saying something kind to him. She supposed crushes were just a habit like anything else. Bye. Karen had a shoot the next day. When she got home, Charlie came and knocked on the door. Can I come in? Karen sighed and opened the door wider. Charlie came in and sat on her couch. He propped his elbows on his knees and put his face in his hands. Karen sat next to him. I'm a transplant, too, Charlie said. I was never crippled, but I was badly burned in a car crash. People couldn't bear to look at me, so I threw myself in front of a car and ended up in this body. He looked up. You're right. It fucking hurts. They don't give transplants to suicides, Karen said. Charlie laughed. Yeah, no shit. What they don't know won't hurt them. Karen didn't know what to say to that. I can't be in a relationship. Don't you understand? I died. You didn't die, Charlie, Karen said. You're right here. She pulled up his sleeve and exposed the scars on his wrist. I suppose your donor killed himself, too. He succeeded where I failed. I didn't mean you. I meant my donor, Karen said. She killed herself. Over a boy. She and Charlie sat in silence, staring at his wrists for a while. Finally, Charlie said, They buried my old body. I wouldn't let them cremate it. I said it had been burned enough. Karen supposed Charlie's body had been victim rather than betrayer, but she said nothing. She just ran a finger over one of his scars. He shuddered. We can leave flowers for your old body, if you like. Charlie said nothing. He just stared at his wrists. Karen hugged him, and they ended up lying on the couch together, with his head on her shoulder. The next day, Charlie wanted to go to the library and find out about David Robinson, his donor. It turned out that David had a problem with depression and had killed himself after not being admitted to law school. Karen tried to hand Charlie the printouts, but his hands were shaking too much to take them. They walked home through the park. Karen and Charlie sat in the grass and watched people and their dogs walk by. Then they picked flowers and walked home via the cemetery where Charlie's old body was buried. They left flowers on his grave, and Charlie cried. Karen hugged him and dried his eyes with her sleeve. "You're still alive," Karen said. "If you weren't, you wouldn't hurt." "Either way," Charlie said, "I'm too fucked up for a relationship. So let's be friends." "Okay," Karen said, and kissed him on the cheek. They walked home holding hands and didn't say a word as they went to their separate apartments. Karen's period was late. She'd never had that problem before, but she'd heard enough high school gossip to know that she needed a home pregnancy test. It came out positive, so she went across the hall and knocked on Charlie's door. He glanced back over his shoulder, then stepped out into the hall. "I'm pregnant," Karen said. "It's not mine," Charlie said. Karen crossed her arms and raised her eyebrows. "It's David Robinson's," Charlie said. "All my sperm are 6 feet under." "I didn't have sex with David Robinson," Karen said. "I had sex with you." The two of them stared each other down for a while. Then Charlie dropped his eyes. "Fine. What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Karen said. "The baby would probably be guaranteed depression problems, wouldn't it?" "You can't be a pregnant model," Charlie said. Karen sighed. "I'll be by later," Charlie said, and went back to his apartment. Karen called her mother. Her mother swore. "I thought this was one problem I'd never have with you." "Ouch," Karen said. "It's that boy, isn't it? From across the hall?" "Yeah," Karen said. "I know, it was stupid. I thought I loved him." "Yeah," her mother said. "I hear that. I'm a little too familiar with that." Yes, Karen supposed she was. "What are you going to do?" "I wish people would stop asking me that. I don't know." "Well," her mother said, "if you don't decide in the next 9 months, it'll decide for you." Karen hung up then. She sat on the couch and fumed. There was a knock on the door. Karen answered. It was Charlie. He sat on her couch. "What am I supposed to do?" he asked. "I'm not supposed to marry you, am I?" "I don't want to marry you, Charlie," Karen said. Charlie sighed a relieved-sounding sigh. "No offense." Karen snickered. "None taken." "Have you decided if you're going to keep it?" "No," Karen said, and realized she sounded more waspish than she intended. "Sorry. I just got off the phone with my mother." "How did that go?" "I hung up on her." "That well, huh?" Karen couldn't help but laugh. "My mother will kill me for saying this, but if you keep it, she'll pay you child support." "I'm considering putting it up for adoption," Karen said. "I'm pretty sure that the child of our bodies would have mental health problems, and considering that I never thought I'd be able to have children, I'm not prepared to handle that." "Mine especially," Charlie said. "I'm wondering if I'm having so much trouble adjusting to transplant because David was depressed." Karen cocked her head and considered it. It seemed likely, not that she understood the mechanisms of depression. "Maybe you could get medication?" "Maybe," Charlie said, but he didn't sound convinced. "You know it's really not our baby, right?" In a sense, he was right. But part of adjusting was accepting the body as hers. She didn't know how to explain that to Charlie, though, not in a way that he would understand. "This body is mine now." There was a long pause. Then Charlie said, "Yeah." The gynecologist was a white-haired man with kind eyes. When he said she wasn't pregnant, she thought she might cry. "Are you sure? Didn't they tell you about the rejection drugs?" Karen shook her head. "You won't get a period, and pregnancy tests will come out positive." "What about male transplants?" she asked. "Does it affect their fertility too?" "Absolutely," he said. Not as severely, but yes. Low sperm counts, poor motility. I've yet to meet a male transplant who successfully fathered a child. I'm really disappointed in your hospital. She wondered if she should tell Erica Watson's parents that she'd thought of them as future grandparents, and decided no, that would be cruel. She wanted to meet them, though. It was probably wrong of her. They'd probably be traumatized. So instead, she went to Charlie's. I'm not pregnant. Thank Christ, he said, flopping down onto the couch. The doctor said neither one of us can have children, especially me. That's not what they told me, Charlie said. They said I might have some trouble knocking someone up, but I should wear rubber anyway. Karen sighed. Charlie was so irresponsible. Aren't you worried about getting a disease? Or, giving me one? Charlie shook his head, slow but empathetic. I'm already dead, remember? You're not dead, Charlie, Karen said. You're right here. You got a second chance. One I didn't deserve, Charlie said. He stood up and paced. It's different for you. You were a cripple. I was just ugly. You weren't just ugly, Karen said. You were a burn victim. Okay, Charlie said. I was really, really ugly. Chicks hated me. Little kids cried when they saw me. I couldn't cope. Karen crossed her arms. And you still can't. Charlie turned to face her and crossed his arms back, his expression guarded. If I can cope, so can you. Charlie didn't seem to have an answer for that. After a pause, he resorted to, fuck you. Been there, Karen said. Done that. For a moment, Karen thought Charlie would storm out of the room. But all he did was laugh. Erica's mother's house looked nothing like her mother's house. For one thing, there was no wheelchair ramp. For another, it was considerably more upscale. Charlie shivered in the driver's seat. Are you sure you want to do this? Karen said nothing for a while. She didn't know what to say. Erica was dead, and there was nothing she could do to bring her back. It was so unfair that Erica had to die so she could live. Finally, she said, I just wanted to see the house. We should go before they come out and talk to us, Charlie said. Yes, that would probably be bad. Okay. Charlie started the car. He drove back the way they'd come, towards the highway. I almost told someone you were my girlfriend. Karen snickered. You could do worse, Charlie laughed. Yeah. They merged onto the highway. I didn't want to go out cruising for chicks. My friend asked me why, and I realized I'd rather have dinner with you. I thought you were too fucked up for a relationship. I am, Charlie said. But I think I'm getting better. Karen said nothing. She just looked over at Charlie and watched his face. Maybe it's the therapy, he said. Maybe it's the Wellbutrin. But I think the reason I have nothing to prove to myself anymore is you. Karen didn't know what to say to that. This was what she wanted back in the chair. Finally, she said, I'll cook.